Hey guys, my name is Toño Flores. I am a real estate investor. My main focus is creative finance transactions in real estate. And on today's video, I'm gonna be talking about subject to. And I'm gonna go over the most common questions I get. And I'm gonna answer all of them at a surface level. So this is gonna be really helpful for you if you are either a homeowner or a seller or an agent, and we're potentially working on a subject to transaction. So make sure to take notes. This video is gonna be really nice because maybe you have heard of this transaction for the first time, or maybe you are 99% sure. So this is gonna be nice because you will see questions here that you didn't even think of, which is gonna be really nice. And I'm gonna go at a surface level. I'm gonna answer those questions, and I'm gonna even make drawings. I hope that you are a visual learner. So first of all, before I go into subject to, in today's market, right now is May of 2024. A lot of people are using words such as subject to, wraps, mirror wrap, exact wrap, seller finance. They are all pretty similar, but they are different in paperwork, the way we set up paperwork, the way the seller is protected. They are all pretty similar, so bear with me for a second. I'm going to explain the similarities of each and how are they different. So yeah, let's get right into the video. I'm going to make sure that I read information from the IRS. I'm going to show you also the settlement statement. So, of course, the first question is going to be, what is subject to? So subject to, I'm gonna read it, is a way of purchasing, transferring real estate where the buyer takes title to the property and the existing loan stays in the name of the seller. In other words, the sale is completed subject to the existing mortgage, subject to the existing financing. The buyer now controls the property, takes on all responsibilities of ownership, and makes the mortgage payments on the seller's existing mortgage. So now I'm going to explain it with my words. So it's leaving the mortgage in place. The deed and title transfers to the buyer, so he has control of the property, but the mortgage stays in the seller's name. I know that you will have a lot of questions. You will say, okay, how is that possible? How the deed, the ownership of the property transfers to the buyer, but the mortgage stays in the seller's name? I'm gonna get into that. I'm gonna get step by step. I'm just telling you the definition of subject to. Now, subject to is not something new. This type of transaction has been done for hundreds of years. Since the 80s, the 70s, it's been done from title companies, closing attorneys, even homeowners are buying houses today like this, and in the late 80s. So this transaction is not something new. This transaction has been done for hundreds of years. It kind of comes back and becomes popular again every time there is a market shift. So right now we are in the year of 2024, and we all know that in 2021, 2022, interest rates were as low as 2 to 3%. And now interest rates are at 7.5%, and even on DSCR loans, investor loans are as high as 8%. So let me make a little bit of drawing. So when you sell a house subject to the existing mortgage, let me make a little bit of drawing here. Here is the house. Let me change the color. Here is the house again. Boom. Here is you. Here is the seller. Here is the agent. So when you sell a house, when you buy the house, you get what is called the deed, the ownership. If you have the deed, it just means that you are the owner of the house. And maybe you got a mortgage that is attached to the house, and that's the debt attached to the house, a lien against the property. and that is called the mortgage. So those two documents have nothing to do with each other. On a subject to, the debt stays in the seller. Here's the agent. And the deed and title goes to the buyer. Whether you are selling it to a single person, or to an investment company, to an LLC. Okay, so that stays, the mortgage stays in the seller, the deed transfers to the buyer. That is subject to. Okay, let's move on to the next question, and that is, oh my god, this is one of my favorites. I would say, is subject to legal? The short answer, yes. Let's move on to the next one. I'm kidding. So it is legal. It is legal in all 50 states. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna actually show you. Give me just a second. I'm gonna show you a settlement statement. Settlement statement. Here's the settlement statement, also known as HUD. So it's actually on the HUD, on the settlement statement, it's on the lines 203. As you can see, existing loans taken subject to, and line 503. Existing loans taken subject to. So this is all legal in all states. As you know, in every state they do the paperwork differently. So that's why it's really important. On my team, I have a transaction coordinator. I have a certified transaction coordinator who is certified to do this type of transactions, creative finance transactions. Whether we are doing a deal in Texas, in Florida, my transaction coordinator has a team in place and they know how to do the paperwork depending on the state we are doing the transaction. Okay? So short answer is legal. It's been done in all 50 states. It's been done for hundreds of years. And here is the challenge. You will get title companies, you will get closing attorneys that they say they've been in the business for 30, 50 years, hundreds of years. You're gonna find title companies that they don't know how to do these transactions. They don't know how to do the paperwork. They don't know how to protect the seller. They are gonna say that they don't do this type of transaction. It's completely normal. It's all about finding the correct title company, finding the correct closing attorney that is experienced to do these transactions, and most importantly, to use a transaction coordinator to help you with everything. So let's move up to the third one. As I said, I'm gonna go just at a surface level. I might stay in one question a little bit longer than other ones. So let's move on to the third one. What is it? Why would any seller do this? I mean, why would anyone do this if they can sell it with cash, right? I'm gonna make some drawings. So as you know, subject to comes back. It's been done for hundreds of years, but it comes back every time there is a market shift. So as we know, 2 to 3 years ago, we were at the height of the market. Interest rates were at 2 to 3%. 2 to 3% interest rates. And now, on today's market, we have interest rate as high as 7 to 8% depending on the loan. Okay? So, why would any seller do this? What happens a lot, I want to tell you about a recent deal that I just got under contract in Lubbock, Texas. These were the numbers. I don't have the numbers in front of me right now, but I'm gonna tell you what happened and what we did on this transaction. The seller bought their house recently, 2 years ago, at the height of the market. He bought it for $400K. The loan that we are taking over is at 3%, which is really nice. Monthly payments are pretty low. The monthly payments right now are double or even triple than what we had 2 to 3 years ago. Crazy. So this seller is using an agent. I'm not gonna say names because we haven't closed on the transaction. And actually, I believe the seller, something happened with his life, and he got behind on payments. He was not able to make the payments for 4 months. They tried to sell this house for more than 4 months, and no one was able to come in at the 400,000. Right? Now, something that I'm missing, since they bought it so recently on this house, they owe about 380,000. Oh, sorry. 380,000 on their mortgage. So what's the problem with that? Even if they sell their house at the full asking price, they were at 450 and they went all the way down to 400,000. Even if they sold their house at 400,000, the cost to sell the house today, paying the listing agent, that's 3%. Sometimes they lower the commission, I understand, but it's 3% normally. Buyer's side of the commission, which is another 3%, closing costs, and now we are on a buyer's market. They are asking for concessions. So it's about 9%. That's the cost to sell a house today. So 9% of 400,000, what is that? 0.89. That is 356,000. That means that they will have to cut a check for about 24,000 to sell the house. To sell. If you pull a seller net sheet, they will have to spend 24,000 to sell their house. Not a lot of sellers have that money out of pocket to sell their house, and I mean that's crazy. Who would like to spend money to sell something, right? So in this situation, even at a cash offer at the full asking price, not even above that, it's gonna work because the seller was behind on payments for months, and they will have to spend 24,000 to sell the house. So it was 24,000 plus arrears. It was another 10K. So in this situation, we are gonna cut off the arrears. Oh shoot! We are gonna cut off the arrears. We are gonna pay the leasing agent, and we're gonna pay closing costs. So that way, the homeowner doesn't have to spend any money to sell the house, doesn't have to cut any check to sell the house. That's why someone we do is subject to. Now, I want to say something. We are doing, instead of a subject to, we're doing a mirror wrap because they had a VA loan on the house. I'm not going to explain the differences between mirror wrap and subject to now, but we are not doing subject to anymore. We are doing mirror wrap. Mirror wrap. Okay, boom. It's actually inside their VA guidelines, their VA loan documents. It tells you exactly how to do a mirror wrap. I'm not gonna go into the VA entitlement, the DTI. I'm just right now answering. I'm gonna probably make a video about that. So let's move on to the next question. Let me push it. Let me go to the next question, and that is, how can the seller verify that the payments are being made? How are the payments being made? Okay, so the buyer takes over the mortgage, all the payments related to the house, taxes, insurance, HOA if there is any. If there is solar panel, we would also take over the solar panel. How are the payments being made? Is the buyer sending the money to make those payments to the seller, and then the seller makes the payment? That doesn't sound secure, right? That doesn't sound that good for the buyer, right? How do you make sure that the seller is going to make the payment after we send that money? When we do this type of transaction, it's really important that during escrow, so we have the house here, seller, I'm sorry for my drawing, seller, agent, you have the buyer. When you open escrow, you have the deed, you have the mortgage, right? During escrow, when you open escrow at title company, of course you go to a title company, to a closing attorney, depending on the state. During escrow, it's really important that we set up a servicing company. Go a little bit down. Servicing company. What does the servicing company do? It pulls out the money out of the buyer's account, out of his business account, and it disperses the money to the mortgage, to the HOA, taxes, insurance, to every payment related to the house. Pulls the money automatically out of the business account, out of the person's account, and they are certified to service these transactions, subject to transaction. So we set up a servicing company, so there is no one involved. The seller doesn't have to ask for the payment. The buyer makes the payments and disperse those payments from the servicing company to all the payments. So no one is involved. That's really important. So we set up an escrow, a servicing company that is gonna handle the payments. That's all I have to say. That's how all the payments are being made, and that's the best way to make these payments. It's really important to set up a servicing company. I'm gonna answer these questions in a bit. When the buyer wants to buy a house right away after selling their house subject to, or they want to use their VA entitlement, or if the buyer defaults on the payment, what happens? I'm gonna get right into that. So let's move on to the next question. What happens if you, here you go. What happens if you miss a payment? How am I protected? I don't want to have the liability, right? Here is the thing. We are gonna be using, on a subject to transaction, the same paperwork that the bank uses to protect themselves. We're gonna use the same paperwork to protect your seller, the seller, your clients. And that is a promissory note, and a deed of trust. If your seller miss on the payments, the bank takes the house. If the buyer misses on the payments, they take the house. The sellers take the house. But I don't want to have the liability. I don't want the seller to have the liability. Make sure that you have and you find a credible buyer. Make sure that they have proof of funds. Make sure that they have done recent transactions with other agents. Make sure that they are liquid in case something happens. They have the ability to pay the house in full. Make sure that they have done this transaction before. So the way that you mitigate a risk is that you find a credible buyer and that you protect your clients, you protect yourself with a promissory note and a deed of trust attached to the house, right? Inside of the paperwork, there is a performance clause in there that states in there what happens if we ever default on the payments. If the buyer ever defaults on the payments, right? That's what we do. So that's at a surface level. That's how we securitize your client. We securitize, they are protected with paperwork and finding a credible buyer, right? Let's move on to the next one. How are utilities and insurance handled? Let me read this so I can answer it in a better way. Our insurance agent will be responsible for replacing your current policy with our policy, which includes the addition of the seller as additional insured parties. So it's going to be as an additional insured. Our company will be responsible for all the things related to insuring the property and entitled to any claims. we will take the necessary steps to transfer utility services into our name, right? So we will handle all of that. That's where the transaction coordinator comes and helps with that, the title company and all of that. So again, the buyer is going to be responsible of making those payments, the insurance, taxes, the HOA, anything related to the house. The TC is the one that handles everything, that puts the paperwork in place. We have title insurance, homeowners insurance, lenders insurance, everything we have in place in case something happens. We have insurance in place. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. No drawings on this one. How long do you plan on keeping the mortgage in the seller's name? That's a great question. It depends. My answer is it depends on the market, right? It depends when I sell. It depends when the seller. It depends when the buyer sells the house or refinance, or pays the loan off. So for the buyer, it's on their best interest to sell or refinance as soon as possible. We don't know when that is gonna be, because we don't have a crystal ball telling us what is gonna happen with the market, what is gonna happen with the interest rates. Like I would have loved to have a crystal ball to tell me what the Fed is gonna do with the interest rates here and there, if they are gonna lower some points in a year or two. We don't know what is gonna happen. So what we always say is we're gonna keep the mortgage in place indefinitely, right? Until we sell, until we refinance, until we pay it off. Ideally, as soon as possible, but for me, I don't know when that is gonna be. Okay, my other question is, why would the buyers want to be on the mortgage? The only impact that the buyer has, having their name and having someone to make those payments for them, is that it impacts their credit. It improves their credit over time, right? So I'm not saying that you need or you don't need to improve your credit, but I'm just saying that that's the only impact that you have from having a performance mortgage in your name, right? So let's move on to the next one. How does this affect my credit? Again, so having your name on the mortgage and having someone to make the payments, the only thing that it does is that it improves your credit over time. It doesn't affect your credit. As long as the buyer is making the payments, you find a credible buyer that is making the payments all the time, the only thing that it does is that it improves your credit over time. It doesn't keep you from buying another house. I'm gonna get into that. The debt to income ratio. It doesn't keep you from using your VA entitlement. It doesn't keep you from the only thing is that it actually helps you to buy another house because you have a performing mortgage in your name. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. The do on sell clause. Okay, I'm gonna spend a little bit of time on this one because the do on sell clause is the biggest boogeyman in creative finance transactions. It's the biggest boogeyman when you go to real estate school. When you go to real estate school, they only tell you that it's a thing, but they don't tell you how it works, right? The do on sell clause, it doesn't mean that they take the house, that the bank takes the house right away. So let me get into that. First of all, the banks are not in the business of foreclosing houses. They are not in the business of keeping houses for themselves. As you can see, all they want to do is get rid of them as soon as possible if they foreclose on the house, right? The do on sell clause, how does it get triggered? It gets triggered when there is a transfer from the deed to a different buyer. And let's say the bank notices in 1 year, in 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, and they say, hey, we saw that you transferred deed, we saw that you transferred ownership, but the loan didn't get paid. Didn't get paid. We want you to pay us in full. So what happens, this is pretty rare. We've got the do on sale clause call on us 2 times. I know people that does thousands of transactions such as Pace Morby, and he gets called 1 do on sale clause out of 1,000 transactions. But in the rare event that happens, this is what we do. What the bank does, or the lender does, is they send a letter to the buyer saying, we want us to pay us in full. It doesn't mean they are taking the house right away. They are just saying, we want you to pay us in full. Right? So they send you a letter, and it says there that in 30 to 90 days, we want you to pay us in full. So all we gotta do, here are the options. Option 1 is just call the bank. You call the loss mitigation department and just say, hey, you send me a letter, the do on sale clause. I just want to let you know that I bought the house subject to, I'm making the payments. I explain the situation, and you know what? Most of the time, they are okay with that. They say, okay, we just didn't know. We just saw a deed go transfer, and no one let us know. So 99% of the time, by just letting them know what happened, they are okay with that. I mean, the buyer is making the payment, the bank, by someone making the payments, they are going to be okay with that, okay? But let's say they want to push, let's say the bank says, we don't care anymore, we're pushing forward, we want you to pay us in full. What we do, I'm going to tell you what we would normally do, is we would deed the property back to the seller. And we would repurchase the house on an agreement for sale. It's known differently depending on the state. It's known as bond for deed, agreement for sale, land contract. It's known that the general word for this type of transaction is called an executory contract. So what that means is that we deed the property back to the seller, but the buyer still has control of the house. That's what we do. We just deed the property back to the seller, and that's how the do on sale clause gets cancelled. That's how you, that was easy, right? So the do on sale clause is the biggest boogeyman in creative finance transactions. They just tell you it's a thing, but it's really rare for it to happen. And even though it happens, we have many ways we can overcome it. The first one is just call the bank, let them know what happened, and if they want to push forward, we will just deed the property back to the seller. That's the solution. That's it. Easy. Let's move on to the next one. And that is, what about my DTI to buy another house? But wait, my name is still in the mortgage. My client's name is still in the mortgage. They are not going to be able to buy another house. They need to get rid of this house. They need to sell this house. You cannot do subject to. Okay, wait. How is it possible that an investor, in bigger pockets, how is it possible that an investor has so many houses in their name? They get loans. They have so many houses in their name, even though they have a 1 W-2 job. How is it possible? How? Right? The reason they are able to get so many loans in their name is because they show the income that they are getting from the house, and they show that income is paying off the mortgage. So that's how they take care of debt to income ratio. That's from an investor, right? So now you're gonna say, okay, I'm a homeowner, I'm not an investor. So how you take care of the debt to income ratio? I want to buy another house. You can take the debt to income ratio off whether you are buying right away after selling the house you are selling subject to, whether you are buying in the next 1 year, 10 years. You can take care of the debt to income ratio. We have different ways to do it depending on how soon you are looking to buy your next house. But the short answer is the servicing company. This is where the servicing company comes into place again. This is why it's so important. Servicing company. Since the servicing company is servicing those payments is what it's called, we just gotta show the new lender that you are working with, or the buyer the seller is working with, that the payments are being made by this buyer and not the seller, and that's how they take care of the debt to income ratio, because the seller gets settlement statements every single month. Settlement statements, statements that the payments are being made by the buyer. Payment has been made. We show it to the lender that they are not making the payments, the buyer is making the payments, and that's how they take it off the debt to income ratio. If they want to buy right away, they want to buy another house right away, what we do is a lease purchase. Every lender has their own way, they have their check boxes. We just gotta ask the lender, hey, what do you have to see so you remove this mortgage out of the debt to income ratio? Most of the time what we hear is that we just gotta do a lease purchase, a lease agreement with the seller, a temporary lease agreement with the seller. Most of the time they just ask for 2 payments in advance. I believe it's 125% above what their mortgage balance is. The mortgage balance, their monthly payment is with taxes and insurance, 125%. We show that to the lender, and that's how they take care of the debt to income ratio if they want to buy right away. Okay? So, even if they want to buy right away, or in 1 year, 10 years, there is the servicing company showing that the buyer is making the payments, not the seller. They are getting the statements, they are getting history of these payments, and we show it to the new lender. Again, the challenge is gonna be that you're gonna run into lenders that just don't have the experience. They are gonna say, "Oh, it's not possible. You are not a loan officer. You don't know what you're talking about." Remember that the person that is doing all the hard work is the underwriter. So you gotta talk to the underwriter and ask him and say, "Hey, we're purchasing the house subject to, on a mirror wrap, whatever. What do we gotta do?" Ask them, what do we gotta do so you can remove their debt to income ratio, the mortgage out of the debt to income ratio? The reason we ask is because every lender has their own way to do it. So you just ask and they will let you know. The loan officer, they don't have the experience. So that's why you have to talk to the underwriter. Okay? So DTI overcame. I overcome the DTI, easy. Now, again, I'm coming back to what I said in the beginning of this video. In today's market, subject to is becoming really popular. A lot of people are mixing words and using not similar words, but they are using subject to, mirror wrap, exact wrap, and seller finance, and they are all sound pretty similar. But they are all different. They are all different because the paperwork is different, or mirror wrap, exact wrap, they are like fancy words. For example, exact wrap and seller finance, it's the same thing. I'm gonna tell you why. So first of all, we don't do subject to because I call it a naked subject to. That's what Landon Moore says. That's where I got the naked subject to. Because on a naked subject to, on a clean subject to, we don't protect the seller, we don't protect you as the homeowner with a promissory note and a deed of trust or mortgage, depending on the state. Deed of trust or mortgage. Okay. In a clean subject to, there is no second lien attached to the house. There is no promissory note. There is no deed of trust. In what transaction you do, you put a promissory note and a deed of trust. You do it on a mirror wrap or an exact wrap or on a seller finance. You're gonna say, but what do you mean? Like, it's not possible to do seller finance. Seller finance is just on free and clear properties. Here is the thing. On a seller, what is a seller finance? What is seller finance? Seller finance is just creating a note, promissory note, deed of trust, stating how you're structuring the purchase price or the equity. Payments, down payment, and then payments, right? So on a seller finance, oh shoot, let me erase this. I was looking for an eraser. Let me seller finance. So, mirror wrap is a fancy word when there is a VA loan on the house. Oh man, what happened here? It's a fancy word for seller finance when there is a VA loan on the house. VA loan. Because inside their VA loan documents, inside their VA guidelines, it tells you exactly how to do a mirror wrap. You create a promissory note and a deed of trust, mirroring the payments, mirroring the terms, the loan terms that they have on the house, right? Exact wrap is also a fancy word to do seller finance. I'm going to tell you why. Exact wrap is for any other loan. Conventional loan, FHA, jumbo loan, adjustable, mortgage. By the way, the only mortgage that we're not able to do a subject to, an exact wrap, mirror wrap, whatever, seller finance, is on a reverse mortgage. We don't touch a reverse mortgage. Someone might do it if it's like a fast exit strategy, like if you buy and you sell right away or something like that, but we don't touch them. Anything else you can do a subject to transaction, right? So exact wrap is for conventional loans, for FHA, jumbo loans, anything. That is the fancy word for seller finance. I'm gonna tell you why. Because you can essentially say the seller is seller financing their house to the buyer, to us, at the same terms that they owe their house, right? We're creating a promissory note and a deed of trust with the same terms that they have on the house, that they have on the loan. If the PITI, what is the PITI? PITI is the mortgage payment, like that, mortgage payment, taxes, and insurance. So if the PITI, mortgage with principal and interest is, let's say, 1,800, they are just seller financing their house to me as subject to. They are just seller financing their house to the buyer at the same terms that they owe the house. So they are gonna make a promissory note and deed of trust, making the seller payments of 1,800. That's all it is. They are doing a seller finance on the monthly payment that they have on the house, right? That's the only difference. It's just a fancy word. At the end of the day, we are no longer doing a subject to, because on a subject to there is no promissory note and deed of trust. We are always doing, if you want to use these three fancy words, the seller is seller financing their house to us at the same terms that they owe their house. That's all it is. So guys, that is all for this video. I felt that I went a little bit quick on each one of them. Again, I just went at a surface level. I stayed in one of them a little bit longer than other questions, as I just told you, such as the do on sale clause, the DTI. After watching this video, you are still confused, you are still concerned about this, or maybe you are really creative and you know about other question. Let me know, and happy to go over it with you. I hope that now it makes a lot more sense to you what subject to is, which again, wanted to wait until now. We are not doing subject to anymore. Depending on their loan, if they have a VA, we are doing a mirror wrap. If they have any other loan but a reverse mortgage, we are doing an exact wrap or seller finance. An exact wrap is a fancy way to say it, to seller finance. So in any other loans, your seller or you as the seller, as the homeowner, you are just gonna seller finance their house to me at the same terms that you owe your bank. That's all it is. Here's the thing. Right now, in this video, I'm talking on situations where there is no equity, or maybe you are underwater, the seller is underwater, maybe they are behind on payments, and they don't have equity. If they have a lot of equity, more than 50K, 100K, it's a different conversation. I'm gonna make another video about that. It's gonna be called a mix of subject to and a mix of seller finance, which Pace Morby calls it a hybrid deal. Okay, part subject to, part seller finance. Okay, so that's when they have a lot of equity, which is not the case in this video. Okay, that's all. Feel free to leave any comments down below here on YouTube, whether you're watching here on YouTube or Facebook, or feel free to send me a text if we are potentially working on doing a subject to. Whether you're an agent or a seller, feel free to text me back. Let me know what you think. If there is something you want more explanation, or you want to let me know how it works in more detail, I'm happy to do it. And again, this is just an option that you as the seller, as the homeowner, or your client, if you're an agent, can have on the table if a cash offer is not working. If you as an agent, or you as the homeowner, you're not getting the cash offer that your client that you would like, this is just an option to have on the table. Because normally when we do this type of transaction, I'm gonna write it here. When we do this type of transaction, subject to, the buyer, oh man, I'm sorry for my writing. The buyer pays for the listing side of the commission. The buyer pays for closing costs. So that is normally as part of the down payment to the seller, because it's in situations where there is not a lot of equity, or maybe you are behind on payments. Normally the buyer will cut up the arrears, right? He's gonna catch up the arrears, cover the arrears at the closing table, cover the arrears. And if you have, depending on the equity situation, between the asking price and how much they owe, the buyer can give, even after paying the commission, closing costs, depending on the numbers, we can give a little down payment to the seller. Okay? So that's all, guys. This was subject to, 100% legal, all done. It's been done for hundreds of years in all 50 states. The paperwork is handled differently in every state. That's why on my team, for example, we have a transaction coordinator. She takes care of everything. And that's also why we can waive the buyer's side of the commission. There is no one representing us because we have a transaction coordinator. So we can save that money to the seller or for you as the homeowner. Waive buyer's side commission. So a little bit about me and my experience. We do about 1 to 2 deals like this a month. I think a little bit more right now. We are getting good traction right now. Feel free to ask me for agent referrals. Feel free to ask me for settlement statements, proof of funds, to show you that we are liquid. In the rare event that we default on the payments, it would be a bad decision for us business-wise, because we are giving this down payment to close to the house. We call it the entry fee, but we have paperwork in place that securitize you as a seller, securitize your client if you're an agent. Okay, so let me know your thoughts, and looking forward to doing a deal with you. Looking forward, I hope I can help you. I hope I can help your client with their situation. And if you're an agent, if it doesn't work for this homeowner, let's do. Let me know what other deals you might have in the future that might apply or that might work for your clients. And looking forward to doing many deals with you as an agent. So that's all. I hope you like the video. Please, if this was valuable, I've been spending a lot of time learning this from attorneys, from my community, SubTo, from lenders, from my team. So if this was helpful, share it. Feel free to share it to the lender, to an attorney, to your broker, to your spouse if you're a homeowner. Feel free to send this to your clients if you are an agent. And yeah, let me know your thoughts. Thank you so much. I will make more videos about this, about creative finance. And yeah, hope you enjoy it. I will see you on the next one. Bye bye.